Hello and welcome to another episode of 1000 Actually Fun Books. We are doing a series of book reviews looking for the best of fun escapist books. And today we're doing a book called Specters in the Glass House by Jaime Jo Wright. So this book is a suspense novel. It is mild mystery, but not the kind of mystery where you can solve the problem with clues and stuff. It is definitely atmospheric suspense. So the plot involves two different threads. You have a modern storyline going through the present day and one going through the past in the Prohibition era. So somewhat after World War I. And it involves the Prohibition. That is actually a background that is relevant to the story here. So the case in the Prohibition era is a young, used-to-be heiress is now impoverished because her family wealth came from alcohol. She was part of a brewery group. And through the Prohibition, they've lost basically everything. They have enough that she can have the summer house. It's more like a mansion for most people, but the summer house. And a couple of servants, a cook, a butler, a gardener, that kind of thing. And so she can go and live there comfortably. But strange things keep happening around there. There seems to be ghosts in the house. There seems to be supernatural events. There's a lot of things revolving around what turns out to be called the butterfly butcher. Butterflies are actually a huge theme in this, all the way through. That is an interesting thing for the author to have written, using that as the spookiness, because butterflies is very much not something you think of as being spooky or scary, but the author does a good job of that in this. Anyway, you find out that there's several murders that happen in this era, and then in the modern era, you have somebody coming to write a book about the butterfly butchers, things that happen there. So they have come to this house to figure out what happened in the past, write a novel about it. But while they do, things start happening to them there that are creepy and very reminiscent of the historical butterfly murders. And so you've got those two parallel stories, and the author does a very good job of paralleling them. Like, there's a lot of themes, not exact duplicates, but a lot of things that you're like, this happens in the past, then this similar thing happens in the future, and they step forward. Okay, so that's kind of the story, I guess, very vague because you don't want to spoil too much of it, of the plot on this. It's murders that are happening in this house centered around a greenhouse that was used to house butterflies, and the butterfly butcher who uses butterflies as part of his theme of killing people, where there are butterfly corpses and stuff around his victims or as threats to his victims and things like that. So, things I like. One will say is that I really liked those two twin perspectives. Now, this isn't something I tend to really like, where you're constantly flipping back and forth between two different eras, but the author does a really good job. And it does well in such a respect that it actually builds the tension of the suspense. Because, for example, in the future, and this is not a spoiler because you discover this really well early, the future tells you people who are killed in the past. So by the time you flip back to the past, these people haven't died yet. So you're kind of anticipating them being killed. And that actually builds up the tension a lot more than I would have anticipated before I read this. But it really does. It makes it that atmospheric, you feel that dread, that pervasive kind of gloom that this person is going to die. We just don't know when or how or why, but it's going to happen. And so that builds up the suspense. It also did a really good job because sometimes in those kind of stories where you have two different storylines, you're really interested in one one, and when it flips to the other, you're like, no, I don't want to read that story. I want to get back to the other one. And the author does a really good job of balancing out the two stories. It does occasionally end one thread on a cliffhanger that you really want to get back to, but never so strongly that you don't want to do the other thread. The author does a good job balancing those. So I give it 2 thumbs up for that part, because too many authors don't do a really good job, I think, with that. So I liked the handling of disability in this, which is kind of a random thing, but there are multiple characters with multiple disabilities. There's physical, mental, emotional, you might even say spiritual. There's things going on in there for a lot of different characters in a lot of different ways, and the author does a good job of handling it. Now, the most obvious one that you see kind of again very at the start is one person had lost their leg in World War I. So he hobbles around with a crutch in the Prohibition era. And he talks about that as that being a stigma, that people, look down on him for having a disability, and how he is still totally capable. He is still a man. He has still stuff to give to the world just because he has a disability. And so it talks about the disabilities, and it handles the disabilities and the issues that people have, I thought, are really well. So there is that going on. There is interesting with the women. So you've got 2 main characters that are women. You've got, is it Marion. Marion in the past and Remy in the future. So Marion in the past is the kind of, wilting flower that you kind of think of when you think of a genteel woman who has never had to do anything for herself and needs a strong man to take care of her. She just expects that and doesn't really know how to handle big decisions or stress or anything like that, because she just has never had the opportunity to do it. And she really wants to have that security of somebody else taking care of her. And this is an interesting take on a woman that most writers today won't write women like that, because they have to be, most writers, need your women to be hyper competent, able to handle anything a man could do. But it doesn't come across bad in this, I didn't think. I thought it handled it well, because it seemed very real to me. Like, there are definitely women like that in the world. I may not personally relate to this person, but I like the fact that it wasn't a hyper-competent, super uber feminist superhero woman, all the time. It just felt like a nice change sometimes. The more modern woman is more modern in that she doesn't seem to need a man in that same way. So she doesn't have quite the same personality. But I liked her as a character, generally speaking. Both of them were interesting people. Not necessarily relatable, but interesting. So the characters, I thought that the book did a good job. That includes there's sort of mild love interests, kind of, as in, people that they're kind of maybe interested in, but maybe they're suspects, maybe they're actually the butcher, maybe not. And the author does a good job handling that. You can see why the women in both eras are interested or drawn to the men that they are. So I thought that they handled that well. Let's see. Christianity. So this is written by, published by a Christian publisher. And I thought it was interesting how well they handled the Christianity in this. It did not feel preachy, pushy. The insertions of God, faith, prayer, whatever, it all felt very natural. Like something that a conversation could actually have. Not having that awkward, well, I gotta shove in Christianity here because this is a Christian book kind of thing. It didn't really feel like that. It felt very minimal, but natural in when it came in. So I liked the way it handled religion in there. And there's kind of a more broad spectrum of religion as well, because it's not always talking about Christianity. It can talk about other stuff, because you also have supernatural stuff, we'll put that in quotes, happening around. And so how does that relate? What does that mean? That kind of stuff that's going on here. The final thing that I'll say on the really like is actually the language. The author does a great job of just her language, her writing. There's a lot of introspection, a lot of reflection, a lot of people musing on what's happening. Really, it's only from two characters' point of view, but you really get their perspective really handled well. And I just want to give you a couple sentences on page 11 that I thought just kind of typifies the kind of writing. The car door was wrenched open with a protesting groan. Marion palmed the hand of her chauffeur and crawled from the innards like a butterfly from its cocoon. So it was a single sentence there, but talk about a really vivid imagery of getting out of a car. And it also ties in to the whole butterfly theme you have going on here. So just little things like that. That single sentence was really good. It was really well written. I just was impressed by it. And there are a couple of sentences like that throughout the story that you're just like, wow, this is really well lyrically, poetically described or something. So the author does a good job with that. Good writing. Okay, on to things I dislike. There really wasn't very much. I don't have much to say. I don't tend to like suspense books, but this grew on me. Like, I started out fairly ambiguous, on whether I really liked it, and the more I read it, the more into it I was, the more I liked it. So I'm impressed with it more than I am disliking it, which is really good for me for a suspense story. I don't really have, there was some confusion in the beginning about how the author was going to handle the supernatural with the Christian story, because you've got to balance that out. And in the end, the author did a good job on solving what was going on and understanding, so you as the reader kind of go, oh, that was what was going on. The ending it felt very settled. Like, you understood the motivations of people, you understood, what all happened, who did what and why, and you agree with the main characters on their decision making. The only minor thing that I would say I disliked about the book is there are some serious coincidences going on. But you kind of need that for a book like this. To have a bunch of murders to happen on two different eras that parallel each other, you've got to obviously have a lot of unrealistic coincidences to happen to have that. And that works really well. Your suspension of disbelief, you kind of just go, yeah, that's fine. So I don't really have anything bad to say about this book. So overall, I'm giving it 2 thumbs up. I do recommend it if you like suspense mysteries. This is not a murder mystery in a mystery genre where they have clues to lead you to the bad guys. Instead, it is definitely suspense. And it is not a thriller. There's no big action scenes, really. There's a little bit of, oh no, somebody's going to get hurt, tension going on, but it is not a thriller. It's just purely suspense, atmospheric, good job. It also, I will say, doesn't lean into horror, which is another reason I was really impressed with this, because I do not like horror. And a lot of the suspense can kind of edge too far into horror, and this book didn't. It did an amazingly good job of being tense and suspenseful without being horror. Okay, part 2. What I'm going to do next. I'm going to do a sci-fi book called Big Trouble, Little Earth by Cheney Anspach. Maybe it's both Cheney and Anspach. I can't, tell. But anyway, Big Trouble, Little Earth is a sci-fi. I think it's an action-adventure type of thing. It sounds like he runs into trouble and is constantly running away from trouble or something like that. So that's what I'm going to try next. My husband read the book and was laughing at how funny it was, so apparently it's humorous too. So we will try that next. I hope that you will join me, and thank you for watching.